So welcome everyone to this session. My name is Samuel Kamochu, as always. And today we are going to do two things. One is we'll have a Server 101 session, part 2. And today's focus will be, we will be focusing on service management or process management and the various commands that you must know as we move forward. And we'll also marry that into how you're going to manage your database service like MySQL. So we are going to have a lot of things that you guys have to do in the week. And I'm hoping that I can finalize on the servers 101, or at least do part 3 of servers part 2 of servers 101. And at the same time, help you transition into the databases, data modeling, and APIs. So I will have 2 parts of this session. So the first part will be basically to look at a brief recap and now dive into server management. As always, whatever that we have here or whatever I'll present is on GitHub. You can go to Natujenge and look for Overcome Your Fear guide, and on that repo we will be sharing everything that you need to reference for all the weeks, and whatever that we had done for week 1 and 2 we'll also bring it back. Yes, but for now allow me just to do a brief recap of what we covered, just in case there is someone who has forgotten something. I think last time when we left each other, we realized that a server, the one that we gave you, is a VM. And under it, there are the resources, the host OS, the VM hypervisor, and then every VM, because now you can have a 32 GB RAM machine with 10 CPU, and you can divide that into 2 CPUs and maybe, let's say, for example, 6 GB RAM. You can create VMs and allocate different resources, and even the disk, you allocate them accordingly. But when you allocate them, the hypervisor is able to isolate those resources and dedicate them to a certain processes. And inside there, you can install an operating system. So some of you might be wondering, what are these servers? I just thought it is important to help you appreciate that servers don't look like your computer. So they are basically installed on racks. And these racks are either called network and server racks. So the server looks like this. Sorry, the rack looks like this. And the rack is measured in terms of U's. I don't know why they choose the word U, but a rack can actually hold a lot of equipment with U's. You will find like a Cisco switch is a 1U. The height is 1U. And the rack could be a number of U's. And what you do here is you install the servers. So when we look at a server, this is a server that is a HP server. I got this from a website. I just Googled, and it looks like this. This server is supposed to get into this rack, and you can stack many of them into the rack. Of course, you will stack servers and networking equipment, whether it's routers, switches, you'll stack them, and they are fastened on these panels here. So at least if you've never seen a server, don't get confused when we say a server. And this is the physical server, the one that you install now, the OS. And if you want to do VMs on it, you install the hypervisor on it. Of course, it comes with, like this server has 32 GB RAM and about 10 CPU. So you can now use the hypervisor to split these resources accordingly. Yes, so that U is for unit. Henry, thank you so much. I thought so. Yeah, so you'll find a rack with that 42 units or 42 U's, and most servers will occupy maybe 2 U's according to my experience. But like a switch, the normal networking switch, you'll find that the height of that switch is actually a U. So, yep. So that's it. I hope there is no one who is now confused when it comes to servers. Okay, Now, if you don't have challenges with servers, so today we are going to dive deeper into Server 101. I've done a bit of recap, but today we look at service management, process management, service ports and commands that you use now to check whether, I know some of you are asking, can I use port 80 twice? No, of course you cannot use port 80 twice on the same server or on the same container or on the same VM. You cannot reuse, you can only use the port once. So if you want to know whether the port is in use, there are many commands that you can use to check. And I'll also clarify on port mapping, and I'll also give you the challenge of the day as I give you the challenge for the week. So it's going to be a tough week, and it's going to be exciting for those who want to are willing and ready to learn. Yeah. So I don't know why my screen, okay, I needed to escape so that now I can do this. Now, maybe one of the things I would like to mention before I move now to the work, to whatever we are doing today. Last time we talked about virtual machines, like the server you guys are accessing, the one we gave you, the one you're able to SSH into is a VM. So it is in this sort of configuration. So we have the OS that runs on the server, like the HP server. Then you install the hypervisor. Although sometimes people just talk of the hypervisor, but the hypervisor still needs the operating system functions like process management and stuff like that. So it's okay to say OS and hypervisor, but in some diagrams, you might find them representing the operating system and hypervisor as one thing and just mentioning hypervisor without mentioning the OS. But technically speaking, you still need an OS, although the functions could be lightweight in terms of, because you don't need certain capabilities, you just need capabilities that will support the hypervisor in doing that. So once you split the resources, you give the two CPUs and 4 GB and 100 GB of disk, you assign them and you form now another VM. Now that becomes, you can install an operating system and you can have your libraries and you can have your application running or the runtime system. When I say runtime system, you can think of your library, the binary files and the libraries that you have so that you can run your applications. Like maybe you need Java to be installed for your application to run. So, but now when we go to containerization, the difference is the operating system. There is now the container manager, or some people call it container engine. And now you have the runtime system and the application. So there is no two operating systems. So our containers run on the kernel of the host machine that is containing them. And both of them achieve isolation. But of course, because of the overhead of OS and, you know, bringing up a totally fresh OS for you to run a VM, you find that VMs waste a lot of resources and they also take a lot of time. So people actually deploy containers without VM. So what we are doing now is for the sake of illustration. So don't in production deploy containers, VMs, and then you put containers. It's not a very good practice, although you can run services like that. It doesn't mean that things won't work. But ideally, you're supposed to take advantage of now containers fully running on the operating system of the host machine, and you don't need to install a VM there. So the guys who are talking about Kubernetes, OpenShift, those orchestration solutions, they basically help you achieve this, and you don't even need to log into the host machine. You just need to bring up clusters very easily. And if something doesn't make sense, it will make sense soon as we deploy now our services using those technologies. Now, I will come here and now shift to the work of the day. By now, you know a server has hardware resources. A server can have multiple IPs. You can have many services running on one server. We demonstrated that. I hope you've not forgotten. We can expose ports, and we realize that a port is a number that runs from 0 to 65,353. And the reason for that is because when you are representing a port, you use 16 bits of data. even when you're transferring a request, the port takes 16 bits, which gives us a maximum value of 2 to the power 16, which is 65,354. We talked about the known ports, like SSH runs on port 22, web servers run on 80, mail server SMTP runs on 25, and of course, those services I'm telling you, the web is 80. If you're dealing with a secure one, it runs on 885. Even the mail server runs on 25, but if you want to secure it, you get another port. But those ports are well known and recommended. So you can actually expose ports. And as I said earlier, some services don't need to export port. For your application that you're building, you might need to expose a port. And it's very important that you don't forget what ports are. I hope there is no one with a question up to there. I'll take a small pause and ask you guys, just in case there is anyone with a question or clarification that you'd like us to look at before we dive now into process and service management. Any question?
I may have a question.
Yes, yes. Ask.
Let's say for the port numbers like 8080 or 3000, or let's say that 22, is there any difference between them, or why we use them? Any difference between those ports like 8080, 3, because like various server use various like port numbers. So I don't know what's the logic behind that.
The logic is it's remember, when I'm running my application on the server, I don't know other services that are running there. Now, in terms of the port number, doesn't affect anything. But the reason why, if let's say, for example, you're doing development on Spring Boot, you realize they use the port 8080 as the default port. Why? Because they know it's a web server, but if they use port 80, you might get into another problem, because that server that you are pushing your Spring Boot application or your web application on could be having a web server. So when you start, it fails. So it's, for me, like now, if I want to create a service and give it a port, I can give it a unique port like 7070, just to ensure that it's unique enough and it doesn't conflict with the commonly known services. So like we know that 3306 is for MySQL. They chose that 3306 because MySQL service was created after the well-known services had already been documented. And of course, the well-known services, they are very open. MySQL is a company's product. So they had to choose a port 3306. Why they chose 3306, no one knows. So it's just a decision that you have to make. Like I'll tell you, even in our services, we just choose a port that won't conflict with another one. So it's more semantics. So when you see the port that is above 1023, it doesn't change anything, but it just tells you that, you know, this service is not one of the well-known services that were there. Now you'll go to Kubernetes and they'll tell you, you can only use ports above 33,000 because they want to use other ports for, or maybe they can give you a range and tell you, for you to deploy your service, ensure that you open, these ports are reserved for this. So it's just a convention, and the guys who are working on the applications, they just come up with rules. Like let's say, for example, in our company, we could say that if you're exposing a DB service, never use 3306. Why? Because everyone in the world knows that 3306 is the MySQL port. So anyone who wants to try and hack or abuse your service, they'll be running the port scans. So you write a script checking whether the port 3306 is open on many servers. You know, you can iterate through servers. Yeah, they're just 4 billion IPv. If you consider servers that are in IP version 4. So there are 4 billion. You can loop through, and in each and every server, you can check whether the port is open. If the port 3306 is open, there are times when guys used to deploy services and have the root password as empty. So someone would actually try scan all the servers in the world. And of course, there are certain regions that are known for doing that. So you scan all the servers and scan the ports and find out whether you can try to log in without a password. If you log in, you get the data and you download it, then you delete it, and then you leave a message to these guys telling them, pay us in Bitcoins for us to bring your services. So to bring back your data. So essentially, choice of port numbers could be based on rules that you form within your organization. But if you want to pick a port, don't pick a port that is used by another service. Like if you know Postgre runs on port X, don't use that for your own application. Choose a range that is not very popular. I hope, Tevin, I have helped a bit.
Yes, I think you clarified.
Yeah. So it's for us to choose what ports we are going to use to avoid conflicting with other services that could potentially be running on that server. Yeah. So the guys who chose 8080 is because they wanted Apache is known to run at 80. Nginx is known to run at 80. What if I want to install Apache Tomcat, which is another web server that is based on Java? So Apache guys decided to say, okay, the default is 8080. Why? Because they probably wanted to set up the two on the same server. So 80 is already taken by Apache, the HTTP server, and now they have 8080 as Apache Tomcat. So it was a decision by the Apache Foundation when they were creating that. And even the MySQL guys chose that. The only thing they did is they followed the rules of anything above 1023 is acceptable. Yeah. So thank you very much. So companies can choose which port to use and what are the mode of selecting a port. Maranga, there is no mode of selecting a port. And I can see, Henry, you have shared some stuff on hypervisor. I hope guys can check out. This is a space, of course, here we are not focusing on setting up the VMs and the virtualization, but it's something good. What we are doing now is just to tell you what is out there so that you can dive deeper. So Maranga, so a company can choose which port to use and what are the modes of selecting a port. I hope I've answered that when I was when addressing the question from Tevin. Maranga, you can choose any. In your group, just choose, or we could agree so that you don't conflict. We could choose a range as long as it's not within the range that you know. So you can even start by choosing 17,300 as your port. So it's just a convention in the company. One guy comes up with it, and there is no formula to it. There is no port that is wrong, as long as the other guy who needs to talk to you knows the port. That's all you need to know. Yeah. So sometimes in a company, you could have convention. Maybe I just thought of mentioning that, where you say that we run services, but anytime you see a port starting with 7, that's development environment. Anytime you see a port starting with 8, that's for production. So you could have 8001, and you know that's a service on production. 7001, you just come up with conventions to ensure that semantics, as I said, can people see the port and get some meaning out of it? So I hope that helps you a bit. Now, the other thing that I wanted to mention is that we talked about service, and this one, it will be an interactive session. So I will go to our server so that we look at everything that we have here. Now, I know some of you might have learned about shell scripts, yeah? But today I have, instead of entering the password all the time, I've created a shell script called Natujenge. And what it does, it just connects to, yes, I've created a shell script called Natujenge. And what the shell script does, it's to log into the server. So we talked about things that we will show you in future, shell scripting. But shell scripting, don't get shocked. Shell scripting is just when you're on a shell, any command you can run manually, you can put it into a file and you call it a shell script. So if you want to every day wake up and delete a certain file, you can actually write a shell script and you schedule the server to run it every single day. So don't get confused. So here I'm going to install, here we are using CentOS Stream, 9 Stream, which is equivalent. You might see some similarities with Red Hat. Some commands are the same, but it doesn't mean that all these commands work on Ubuntu. So you might have to find the equivalent of yum in Ubuntu. I think it's apt. And whichever flavor that you're looking at, if you're the guy who does Mac OS, you need to learn CG Brew. Yeah, so here I'll do yum install MySQL. So I want to install a service, MySQL, because this week we are studying the server, the databases. And I will say yes. So that's how you install. This is part of service management. Now, once I install, if I come here and I try to install again, it will basically tell me it's already, the package already exists. And you can see here, I've installed MySQL 8.0. This is manual installation. This is installing without Docker. So I'm doing this so that you understand service management, and eventually you will also appreciate what you should do when you are setting up those Docker images. How do you start? So the commands that I said earlier, that the command you use for starting a service is actually this one. So I'd come here and say system control, system CTL, and then I say, I give the service, I give the command I want to start. Or maybe before I start, I can do status, and then I do MySQL.service. Sorry, let me just see this. I like using the old way, although it's deprecated, so you can have MySQL status. Okay, I think it's MySQL D. Okay, yes, it's MySQL D, so don't worry. So when you're installing, yes, we install MySQL, but it installs MySQL D, D for daemon, or just a background service that runs. So I can come here and say service MySQL D, start. And if I do start, I can do status. If you note, it's redirecting to this, and maybe I can increase my font a bit. Then I can do status. Oh, sorry. Service MySQL D status. Could not find that. Just hold on. MySQL status. I think CentOS Stream has a slight difference. Just hold on. Okay, let me just find. Sorry, I had not done. I used CentOS the previous versions. Let's just start in MySQL service on CentOS 9 Stream. Apologies for this. No. Maybe I'm using technology. Okay. Let's try this and see. I think of course, CentOS 9 and these and 7, they are very different. So let me just do that. Sorry. Do yes. Let's follow this script. Yeah. Let's wait for it to finish. So it has finished. So since it has finished, we'll come here and try to run it. Or maybe what I can do is I can do MySQL version. And you can see yes. So that's the version that you're running. It's 8.0. This document is very recent. Then we can start. So starting, we can use the same commands, and we come here and systemctl. So the installation is the one that is different, but the starting commands are the same. Then you can enable, and once you enable, then you can restart. Yes, when you say enable, it means that when the server starts, it will always start the DB service. Yeah, so that you don't have to start manually. So if you look at the state, or maybe now I can come and say MySQL D status. It gives me the same thing. And if I want to stop, I can stop. If I want to start, I can start. And of course, if I start and look at the status, it starts. If I want to restart, I can actually write restart. So those are commands that you need to remember when you're managing services. So you could be changing this service here to another one. Maybe let me just see whether here there is container D. When Docker is installed, you have a service called container D, and you can see, you can also check the container engine, whether it's running, or the container D, whether it's running the daemon, and you can stop it the same way. So basically, you have an idea of how to start a service. Apologies for the small detour when we were searching for the installation of MySQL. So I had not tried to run on this server, but I hope you understand that the right command is this one, but I prefer this one. So depending on the service name, it could have a .service, or it might not have a .service, depending on what you're working on. Yes, so you know how to install, start, stop, restart, and check status. So if you go and work in Safaricom and they use Red Hat, I can confirm these commands might help you in starting or stopping services. And this is assuming that you're interacting with the real machines. Now, in most cases, one of the things that I want to tell you is that in most cases, you'll find that a service is made up of binary files. And I will teach you a new command. I know some of you already know this. You can look at which, or let's say, for example, yes, which HTTPD. So when there is a HTTPD binary file, if you want to know which one you are using on the terminal, when on your terminal, you can actually do which, and you'll find that there is a file, a binary sbin file that is created by under the user folder sbin. Then these are the binary folders. So you'll find that if I come here, let me see whether I can get container D. Which container D? You can see they are all installed there. Those are now, if you wrote a C program and you built it and it's now installed on the server, the binary files are there. What is actually executed? If I come and look for MySQL D, it will also show me this is what is happening. But if I look for which bash, if I do bash, then you can see bash is there. If I say for which ls, you can find that ls is actually an alias to this one. So if I do which cd command, it will show me that all the commands are there. So if you go to that folder and delete all those binaries, you have deleted the services. So a service is made up of binary files like HTTP, you've seen that one. It is also made up of configuration files. So most of the time in Linux, there are folders that have special meaning. It doesn't mean that you cannot put a binary file elsewhere, but if you find USR sbin inside there, that's where the installations happen. The real application that is run sits there. But it is based on configurations. Those configurations, they are normally in the etc folder. And when you're running the service, there is also a run folder. And depending on the application that you're dealing with, the application needs to store data on the disk. There is also the data path. Like for web server, we know the data path where we put our websites is www HTML. And this is dependent on the server that you're using. If you're using Nginx, the configuration file is different. And of course, services also expose ports. Like we know for HTTP D service, the port is 80. So those are things that you need to know. Now, one of the things that we said last time was that a process has a process ID. Now, one of the commands that I'll teach you down here, and I'll show you, and we will go into each of these folders and we'll look at them, and we will appreciate 1 or 2, 3 things about how services are set up within a server. The key idea here is to figure out the paths where specific information is stored. So run files, they are files that are generated when the system is running. Or you could call them, like the state file, something. And we'll see an example of what is stored in the run files. Configuration files, they just have configurations about your service. Like, let's say, for example, I want to change my document root from this folder. Where do I go? I go to the configuration file and look for this file and change it, restart the service, and it picks the new configuration. If I want to change the port from 80, where do I go? I still go to the configuration file, and we'll be able to see that. If I want to know where the web server puts the log files, then I'll go to the configuration file, and we'll know the log files. I didn't include it here, but I'll add it. So you also need to know where the logs are, where the configuration files are, where the binary files are, the run files are, the data that the application uses. If it's a DB server, where does it store the data when you insert? So we need to appreciate that. Now, the other thing that you need to know is now under process management, and I want to make it clear that a service, as we said earlier, is a process. Now, there are some few commands that we will run, although right now we know how to check the status of the service by using this command, MySQL, which one? This one. We can check the status of this service. There is also, and it's active and running, there is also another way of checking whether the service is running without using the status command. So we will now go to process management, where we will talk about the commands that are relevant. But before I do that, I know in the previous document, you might have seen something called redirecting the output. And the idea of redirecting the output is you can run a command that outputs a specific set of data, and you want to use that data in running in another command. E.g., I want to cut the file, and here I'll go to my folder here, where I think all of you have a folder within this server, Natujenge, CD Natujenge, and there is here Kamocho. I'll go to my folder here, and I'll clear so that you see, yeah. So I have this file. If I want to know the content, cut command can be used to know the content of the file. Now, but what if I want to know how many words are in this file? I can use another command called word count. But word count gives me 3 figures, 1, 2, 3. So it gives me a set of numbers. But those set of numbers, I'll tell you that the first number is actually the number of lines. The second is the number of words, and this is the number of characters. And if you want to use switches, you can confirm, and I can say word count minus L, that gives us the number of lines. I can do word count minus words, and it will give me the number of words. And I can do word count minus C to give me the number of characters. And if I don't put a switch, it gives me everything. Now, what if I have a statement, I want to cut this file, but once I cut it, I want the content to be pushed to another command or redirected to another command. You use the pipe and you can say word count. Now, what will happen is that this command will output this data, and this data will be passed over to this command as an argument. So it's equivalent to saying word count minus L with the data from this file. And once we do that, we get what? 2. If I do word count minus C, we expect 27. If I do word count minus words, I'll get 6 of them. So this is how you can do redirection. Now, if let's say, for example, I have the same file and I want to run another command called grep. I want to run a command and I want to grep in this file, I want to look for the line that has the word content. So I can do that. Now, if I grep, of course, it gives me the line that has content. And I know maybe I can create here a line that has names and .txt and the age. And I'll say we have Peter, who is 28. We have John, who is 27. We have Samuel, who is 56. And you have Jeremy, who is 56 again. And then you have Samson, who is 77. And I can save that file. Now, one of the things that you could do in a file, you could grep, and you grep for anything that has, grep is just, it just looks for the lines that match that condition. And I can do that and it will give me the 2 names. But now grep can be used to filter data. If you have a long file that has too much information and you're looking for a specific, the lines with a specific word, you can use grep to do that. Now that grep command will come in handy when you're dealing with processes. And I just wanted to let you know that you can actually do redirection when you want to get a set of data and pass that set of data to another command. And you can redirect as you continue. So you can actually do pipes, as many pipes, and whatever comes from the first command will go to the second command as input. The second command will go to the third command. And essentially you're doing sort of chaining. So this is a recap. But now I want to tell you why I've been talking about redirection. And it's because in processes, you have a command called process status. And it can actually, you just type PS, it's another command. And sorry, allow me to just clear my screen. I just type PS, and that PS basically shows me the processes that are running on my session. Remember when I logged in, I have a session on my terminal. So that prints the processes that are running on my terminal. So the web server is not running on my terminal, it's running in the background. So I won't see it here. But whatever I want to know all processes, I can use PS minus E, and it will list all the processes, and you can see the processes that are in the server. Now, for some of you, if I know right now I've taught you redirection, if I want to know how many processes are there, I can just do PS minus E, then whatever comes out there, I pass it to the second command, and it will tell me that these are 121 processes. So I can actually come here and see the processes that are running. Some of these processes are services, and some of you can already spot them. For those who have studied Linux, you know some of these. I think you can see Nginx is installed. You can see Docker-D, Container-D. All these are processes that have been created by our services that we are running together. So you can see HTTPD, we have many of them. SSHDs, they are there. Bash is there. So the bash shell that is able to receive specific commands is there. And of course, you can go and read more about that. But the key thing that I wanted you guys to know is that PS minus E gives us all that. Now, what if I do PS? Allow me to clear again. I do PS minus E minus F, which is another switch. Now, what it does, it gives me full information, or it gives me the command and a lot of details. And if you want to compare, just look at that. This one gives me 3 headings or 4 headings. Here I get more, and I'm able to see even, the time that this thing was started and a lot of other information. And the PID is always printed, but the parent process ID is also printed there. So I'll do PS minus EF so that I can see the whole list of the processes, and that list is too long. Maybe I just want to know whether HTTPD is working. So I can use grep. And now the grep comes into and I can do that. And it will show me that I actually have 6 processes that are HTTPD running on my server. And all these processes, they have each of them a process ID, but we can see that this process 42717 was started first, and it became the parent of these other processes here. So you can see 18 is a child of 17, 19 is a child of 17, and that basically tells you that these processes were started by the other one. Now, why am I telling you about parent and children? If you want to kill all processes for HTTPD, you just want to kill the child process, the parent process, and the rest will die. Now, I said kill. Kill is basically when you start a process, if you want to kill it or stop it, you kill. But kill is essentially, you just want to make it, the process die. So you want to send a kill command. And now that takes us to another thing. So you can go and see PS and a lot of things that you can do with the switches that are supported. But another thing that you do is you can use the man command, which stands for manual. So if you don't know the PS command, you can do man. And of course, it will give you a book that you can read on Linux. So you can see the common examples and what they mean. To see process tree, you do that. To get info about the threads, to get info about security, you can do that. And many other things, and the selection, you know, those switches that you can have. -A, -E says select all processes, which is identical to -A. So all those things are there. Now, in case you're here and you're wondering, how do I exit? I told you, if you don't know how to exit, you can close the terminal. But this one, you can do control. You can do escape, then you put colon. Sorry. Actually, you can even do control. Sorry, hold on. Q for quit, yeah. So you can see actually it was given you on the command line. You press Q for quit, yeah. So it will do that. Some of those things do work. If you are not sure, Control C or Control Z, the Control C is one of the commands that you should try. Now, let me get to the other one, which is the kill command. Now, kill, I want to go and do my service HTTPD stop. And I want to do PS -EF, and then I do grep HTTPD. And I won't find anything because I've killed the service. Now, let me just come and do start. By the way, I know some of you might be wondering what I'm doing to run. You can always press the up arrow, those navigation, the down, left, right, the up to show you the previous commands that you ran. So I'm pressing my up arrow on the keyboard. So just in case you're wondering what I am doing, so don't worry, that's what I'm doing. Now I can actually press up and then I start. Now, once I start, it's always prudent for you to confirm that you have started and everything is working. So you can Control C and I can get out of it. And you can see it's telling you on the logs that it's listening on port 8. I hope now ports are not new things to you. Now, the key thing that I want to do here is I want to come and do now PS. Now, I want to come and kill one process, this 188. Remember, 188 is a child process of 184. And I kill it. Sorry, kill is, I do kill, and you kill using the process ID. So I do 47, 188. And I come here and I grab 188 has not died. So you send, when you're killing, and if you look at the kill command, you're basically sending a signal to the process to kill it. And it appears like it cannot die on its own. So we are going to kill the mother. So we come and do 47, 184. Once I kill the mother, I can come and look for HTTP, and the mother and the children, all of them gone. So that's another way of killing a process. Sometimes you kill a process and it doesn't die. You can actually send a signal number. Like I said, kill -9 will force the process to die. Either way, even though you can send a signal to a process. Now, let me explain how killing works. When you run kill, you don't kill the process. You basically send a signal to the process for it to die. And a process can ignore the signal, just like we have seen. But if you want the process to ensure that it respects the signal, you can actually pass a certain signal parameter, and this command is here. And sorry, so you can see all the different types of signals that are there. And what I need to give you is you can do kill -L, and it will show you the type of signals that you have. So there are certain signals that a process must respect, like 9, it must die. So if I send signal -9 and the process receives the signal and it doesn't respond within a certain time, it will still be killed by the operating system. So that's another way to kill a process if you're not running the process as a service. Not all services are started with this command. Yeah, so not every service is started by this command, but all processes can actually be killed by PS, killed, and they can be listed by PS. I hope that's okay. And I hope that you guys now are familiar with kill command, and that brings us to the service management. So to add on the running previous commands, you can go to history. Thank you so much, Alvin. And I can see you have done something interesting. I think earlier I had said you have history, you can run history. And earlier I had said that you can actually run history. Let me see a command that I want to run. Maybe I want to run this command here, 760. I can do 760. You see, it goes to 760 in the history, looks for that command and runs it. But again, you can also run this and this, and it runs the last command that you ran. So if I do ls minus that, if I don't want to type that command again, I can do that and it will repeat the command. Thank you, Alvin, for mentioning that. And those are hacks that you need to have for you to operate services and be a Linux guru. So essentially, all of you, by the end of this session, you must know how to check whether a process is running. You can use PS or you can use service if it is installed as using the service pattern, or I don't know whether to call it pattern or the architecture where you just deploy like a normal daemon with all those capabilities, and you can use system CTL to actually check. So I hope you guys are okay with what we have learned, and I would ask you guys to just raise any quick question if you have any, before I proceed now to how to know whether ports are running or whether they are not running, and how to know whether your server is running and whether it's responding to commands. So anyone with a question, you can post it on the chat, or I can, you can unmute. Question, clarification. Can I proceed? Michael, come on.
Yes.
Yes. Can you explain what you mean?
I found difficult to install in Apache. So in the service, when I wanted to run the service, I could not run the MySQL at the same time. Installing the Apache.
Sorry. I don't know whether I got your voice is not very clear, but let me just mention something I highlighted here and have just realized I didn't take a bit of time. So we know the binary file for HTTP, and we know where it is. You can use the which command. Now, the configuration files, let me just go to config files, then I go to error files so that you can look at that. Now, the configuration file for Apache is defined by the guys who create Apache. And if you're not so sure, you go to etc folder and you look for maybe Apache. And now that I have taught you guys how to do grep, I can actually come and look for a folder called HTTPD and I'll find it. So I can go to HTTPD folder and I can see some folders there. Now, let me just do the same for MySQL. I can go to MySQL. MySQL doesn't have a folder, but my.conf gives you the configurations for the server. Sorry, I was using Vim. So you can see this server, how it looks like. And now they are telling us include this directory. So we can go to this directory. So this is where the server configurations are. So this is a script that we are using. And it says we go there. Once we go there, you can find the MySQL server configurations. Cat. I'm using Vim is another editor that I'm used to. So when you come here, you'll be able to see the data directory where MySQL stores data, socket. I know I have not mentioned about socket, and where the log file is for errors and the PID, the run PID. You know, we talked about these things. You need to know where the run file is. So PID is the process ID. So if I come here and I cut this file, and thank you for asking that, my brother, because now you can see the PID is 46882. If I come here and I do PS grep MySQL, you can see that the process that is running MySQL is actually 46882. If I want to kill it, of course, we are going to kill it the same way, and we can come here and you'll be able to kill. Now, if I come and grep the same process, it's not there anymore. Let's see what the PID file says. It says there is no PID because the service is not running. Now, if I want to start MySQL, of course, now you have to use service MySQL D start. And if I do so, it will be given a new process ID by the OS. So I can come here and you can see that it has 47843. If I go to the PID folder, I will still get the new 47843. Now, the reason why I was talking about that was just because we were able to open the configuration file, and now we know where MySQL puts the configuration file. They are there, and we know where the logs are. So there is another command that we talked about. You can either, when you want to see a log file, you can either cd to that folder, like we have cd var log. Where is it? It's var log MySQL, then MySQL. There is another folder. I can go there and I can find this file. This is the MySQL folder. Now, when you come here, if there are any errors, and you can see it's telling you it's listening bind address is this, and the port is that T3060. This is quite weird. Actually, the port is that T3060, which is something that I did not expect. I thought the port should be that T306, but don't worry, maybe the new version comes with that for security reasons. Yeah, so that's it. So if I go to Apache and I go to etc Apache and I look for HTTPD, also Apache, if I go to the conf folder, and this conf folder, if I go to the HTTP config, I do cut. If I cut, you'll be able to come and see, conf here. This one is not very legible, but I will focus on a few things that you need to see. CGI scripts, if the module is allowed, you can see where the logs are, error log, the directory, the root directory is there. And I guess even the port should be somewhere here. The port is the server name, and let's see whether the port is here. So you can even, it's listening on port 80. If you want to change Apache to listen on another port, you come and change here and restart. So essentially, every service that you install, you must know where the configs are. And why am I showing you this? Because moving them to containers does not fix anything. You still need to know where the configurations are, and you need to know how to change them. And that's why I think there was a group, the Williams group, they are the ones who change the configuration file on the web server, which was quite interesting. But the key thing is you must appreciate that. So if you go to var log, mostly you'll find that the logs there, you can go look for MySQL. You can see MySQL folder. You can also go look for HTTPD and MySQL, we saw it. Access log is what keeps the log of when people access our website. So I'll come here and I hope I can remember the IP. The IP is what? What's the IP of this server? I am trying to avoid opening my script, but I'll go and look for, there was someone who had sent me the IP. I want to remember the IP for this server. Yeah, this one. So I'll come and access it here. And all of you can, anyone with their website, if they have hosted their group website onto this server, which was supposed to be one of the challenges, let me go to group 2, because I know, is it group 3? They are the ones who's hosted. Okay, it doesn't say anything. Did we stop HTTPD? Yeah, this is the life of the engineer now. We can't, you're told your website is not accessible because someone stopped the service as they're doing a demo. So you can see now how you can troubleshoot. If I come here and it now loads the tax manager, and if I go to the access log, so var, so you need to know for Nginx, where are the logs? You need to know for MySQL, where are the logs? Var log, HTTPD, then you have access log. Sorry, it's a directory. I was supposed to do CD. And then I can list, and then I can tail access log. Tail -F ensures that if anyone accesses the page, and what I'll do is I'll minimize this. I'll make it smaller so that we can, yeah. So you can see when someone accesses this, and you can tell which IP is accessing. I hope some of you could actually access the server for us, and you can see the resource they are getting. And you can see the HTTP, you know, 304. Use what you have. But 200 says, I'll give you the file. 304, I'll tell you, you know, why are you asking the file? And yet I had given you the file just a few minutes ago. So this is me accessing. I was hoping that there would be someone else who can access so that we see the access log. Now, of course, if you're looking for errors for that application, Bwana Kamau, you need to know where the error log is. Now, this is the error log for Apache. So in the event there is an error, you'll be able to come and look at what the issues are. But in this case, there is no error. So you don't see the error when you do these commands, yeah? Although sometimes when you come and do service.httpd status, sometimes if the service is not running and it crashed because of a specific reason, then here you can see the error. But details error are within the error log of that service. I hope, Mbwana Kamau, I have helped you. And I hope that most of you now can actually appreciate how to know the error logs for the various applications that you are running. So for each application, you need to understand how the error logs looks like. The error log looks like. So I will finish my, I don't know whether there is anyone who had asked a question. Oh, thank you, Alvin. Where can I get all these commands in case one has to try by self? So this is Maranga. Maranga, this one, you can log into the server and look at the history, but the video will also be here so that you can rewatch. Is that okay, Maranga?
Yep.
Yeah. So the video will be there for you to come and watch. So we are hoping that you will take advantage of that. Now, let me show you another command that we use, net start. network statistic. Yep, it's not there. So I install. I know by now you know how to install thing. Wow, how do I do install netstat? This is CentOS 8. CentOS 9 stream. Sorry, this one, how to use and install netstat command. Okay, I install net tools. I was wrong. So I come here and I install network tools, tools that can help you manage things that deal with networks. And ports are considered part of the network access. So if I come here now, I do netstat, it will show me netstat. It will show me a lot of stuff on that server. Now, when you see connected, I do not want to complicate your language, but I'll be doing something else in the future where we'll be talking about TCP handshakes. When you see connection open, established, we'll deal with that. But for now, the objective is just to appreciate this command. Now, it shows you the network ports that are open, and you can see all these things. But the key thing that we need to know is I come here and use the word grep, and I look for port 80. And what I can see is 80, 80, 80. This is funny because 80 is not listening here. Sorry. What I'll do is I will netstat. There are two switches I need to include, which you will go and find out why we're including them. Netstat minus AN, and it will show me everything there. So let me just come here and grep 80. And you can see here we are listening for connections on port 80. And here, please note, sometimes when you grep 80, it looks for 80 anywhere. And these are guys who had connected to us. So anyone who is running this IP, when you connect to a website, your connection is captured here. And the objective is not to look at websites and how websites work. For now, the key idea is to grep 80. So if I do 80, because 80 has a lot of stuff, I can also grep again. Remember, if I grep again, I'm saying that out of the output of the second command, can I look for the word that has listen? And I can see that there is a service that is listening on port 80. Now, can I do the same for port 3306? And you can see that. Actually, yeah, it's so funny that it opens both 3306 and 33060. I don't know why, but we can find out later. So if you want to know how many ports are listening for connections on the network, then you can see this. So you can see we have port 22 SSH, port 80 web server, 3306 DB, this DB, this one SSH, and 111, go find out. It's part of the well-known ports. Is that okay? Yeah. So you can know whether the port is running. And how do I know that the command is correct? I can actually come here and stop MySQL stop. And of course, if I come here and I do netstat minus AN, then I grep for things that are listening, 3306 has disappeared. Yes, so you are able to know whether the service is running by checking many things. You can use PS. I can come here and say, okay, PS minus EF, and then I can come and say grep MySQL, and I don't see it. Then I'm like, that doesn't look okay. Let me just use service MySQL status. Then it tells me, okay, it's inactive, it's dead. It has been killed. Then I can decide, let me just confirm whether this is correct using netstat, and I can confirm, yeah, it's not running. Now, if I come and say service MySQL and I start it, and I'm able now to come and use status to check, and I confirm that it's running. I can also come and use netstat, and I can confirm that 3306 is up, and I can come here and confirm that netstat PS minus EF, grep MySQL, all those can tell you whether the service is running. But of course, it will indicate that it's running, and the process ID is this, And we know by now, if I cut run MySQL, and then I come and do PID, I can be sure that everything is okay. That process ID is also what is captured. Now, the day you do service MySQL, and I just thought of mentioning, and you say stop, let me tell you what happens. The service, the system CTL guy goes, looks for this PID, finds it, and issues a kill command. So that's why the PIDs are necessary, so that when the service is to be killed, you kill the right process. So PID is the process ID. You can have a PID file, which is a file that you store the process. And you can do the same. You can go cut, run, HTTP, D, and then you can come and look for the HTTP PID also. And it can tell you that this is the process for Apache. If I do PS minus this, then I grep the line. Remember, when you do PS minus EF, it lists all the processes. Grep filters. Grep filters the process of interest. And I've just discovered that I have given you too much information. Yes, this is sufficient. And by now, I hope you guys have the power to actually look at those things. Now, there is another command that we can use to check whether a service is running. Telnet command, go read it. You give it an IP address because you're on this server, you use .localhost, and then you give 3306, and it will tell you connection refused. Sorry, let's look at port 80, and it will connect. So it tells you that that guy is connecting. How do you exit telnet? This is the sign. Go look for this sign on the keyboard. This, you put shift. Actually, you do shift and then the closing. Is it shift? Control, sorry. Control. Sorry, or you can do quit. Not hapo wameona ya. Okay, sorry. Actually, that's not. You exit by using control, then you open in, yes. Then once you do that, then you type quit. Yes, so that's how you close a telnet command. So allow me to repeat again. So you open, it says I've been able to connect. And how do you exit? Escape using this. So this sign here, you don't type it on the keyboard, it's the control. So you do control ikiwa chini, and then you just press that. Then once it gives you that command line, you just say quit and you exit telnet. This confirms that our server is running. So if I stop HTTPD and I stop it and I try to do telnet, it won't work because it will tell us what? Connection has been refused. So you can verify by checking HTTPD status, but since we know it's already down, you can start and you come back and confirm that it's running using telnet. Telnet is a very important command in integrations, because someone will tell me my endpoint is running on this server, this is the port, and it's not working. How do you prove to them it's not working? Do telnet, and it will be able to show you. Of course, telnet is considered insecure in some scenarios, but for just checking whether the port is running, it's not a major issue. So if I come here and look at service MySQL D status, oops, it's down, and that's why telnet could not work. If I start it, and then I'll be able to come here and do telnet 127.0.0.1, and then I give it the port 3306, and I can see that I've been able to connect. And of course, I can do escape the same way, and I can quit. Sorry, yeah. Funny enough, if you type Q, it also works. So that takes you to now you understand everything about services, how they expose the ports. You have utilities on how to check these. So if you want to know whether port 80 is running, you can see how we do that. If you want to know that 306 is running, you can come and copy this and you can put it there. If you don't know what the switch means, and you can see here it's listening, and you can confirm that the service is running. There are many other ways of confirming that the service is running. Now, let me take you back slightly as I conclude. And if you have any questions, please ask them. Shift +6. Okay, Michael Kamau, thank you. Control-6 on Windows. That's okay. Let me take you back to one slide that we had here that I had mentioned. And I want to tell you something. That a container allows us to isolate one service from another. And one of the things that I'll tell you is that within the server, like our VM, when you start your container and another guy starts a container, those containers are processes. So they are processes, but they are managed by the container engine. They are special processes that are managed by the container engine. If you do PS, you might not see all of them, but they are somewhere in the server because this server has only one operating system. And the operating system is the one that manages the processes. But there is isolation that is achieved through containerization. Now, that isolation also comes with each container being given an IP address. So every container has an IP address, and as long as containers are within one server, they belong to a certain network or subnetwork, and that network, they are assigned IP addresses dynamically. If you start a container, one container gets this IP address, another container gets another IP address, the third container gets an IP address. And now because they have IP addresses, it means you can actually access a service inside that host. So it appears like a virtual computer, but that computer is within the network. Now, if a service runs inside the container, so you can access it with the IP of the container, and you can also access it with the port of the service. So if I run a service that runs on port 80, I can actually access it on the container using the IP of the container and the port that the service exposes. But now the unfortunate bit is these containers, they have IPs, but from the outside world, we cannot go to them. So, and this is why now I'll take you guys to the second presentation. Yesterday, some of you are presenting port mapping, you know, minus P80, then you map it, or maybe 80, 81, you map it to 80. Some of you didn't explain what was happening, but I want to bring that into a wrap now with ports and services. So this is our VM.246. And I'm running 4 containers. And the first container is a MySQL container that exposes port 3306 and has an IP 172.17.0.2. And this one is .3. This DB belongs to group 1, and this web app belongs to group 1. The web app runs on Nginx or Apache and exposes port 80. The DB runs on MySQL and exposes 3306. Now, these guys here, if you're inside this machine, you can actually access this service using the IP of the container. But if you want to access it on your laptop, there is no way of hitting this container here. And that's why we need to do port mapping. Now, the unfortunate bit is on this host machine, although this guy was using 80 and this guy was using 80, you cannot map them to 82 of them. So you have to give them unique port numbers. So that's why now you'll say that this service that internally is 3306, I want to map it to 3301, and you do this. This one you do minus P8080, 8801, and you map it to port 80 within the container. And if you do so, then it means that when this container comes up, it will demand for this port here, but the container engine will also bind this port 3301 and map it to 3306 using this container. And that's how we do port mapping. Without port mapping, you cannot access the service from outside that host. And the host, I mean this VM here. So I just want to demonstrate that a bit, and I will now use the image from group 1. I had already installed Docker here, so I can come here and do Docker PS. Again, PS coming from the PS for the OS. Now this is the process status for containers. I don't have any, so I can come here and -A. I had already started the application from Mr. Otieno. And I can come here and I can say Docker start, and I start this container. Now, actually, I don't want to do that. I want to do something else. I want to come here and say Docker run, and then I say this, and I don't give it a port. I don't do port mapping. Sorry. Ignore that. Let me cancel. And then I need to say minus what? -D, yeah? So that I run it in the background. Awesome. Now I can say Docker PS. Now we can see, where do you have 2 of them? Okay, the one that I've started is this one. Now, one of the things that I can do, I'll introduce a new command called Docker inspect. You can see the container, and I'll take you guys to something about the networking configuration of that container. Now, you'll find that this container has been given an IP 172.17.0.3, and it's within the bridge network. So as I said, every container by default, they go to the bridge network and they use this subnetwork, the one that has this. And you can see my IP address is this, and you can go and look for other things that use this now to identify which image was used, which tag was used. Everything about that container is within this JSON file. For those of you who had not heard about JSON, you can see how JSON is also applied here. Now, since I know this is the IP, I can actually come here and say telnet to this IP. But please note, I didn't port map, and I know for sure Mr. Otieno had mapped that port. So I can get into it. But before I do that, let me just quit. And I come here and I do Docker PS. Then I could do Docker stop. I want to stop this because I want to be so sure that there are not 2 services that are running. At the moment, you have 2 containers that are running. So I stop that. And I do Docker PS to confirm that I have 1. Now, if I come here and I try to access this server of ours, and I come, there is no way I can access port 80. There is no way I can access 17, this one. I cannot access this IP, Docker inspect. I cannot access this IP. And that's why we need to map it. Internally, we can see it. And that's why this diagram becomes true, that internally we can talk to this server. And if you want to be sure that I can talk to it, I can actually come here and do wget HTTP. Then I put, for those of you who know wget, if it's not there, we're going to install it. I can do this, and I can copy, and I can paste, and I'll be able to. Wget is not there, so I can do install, or maybe I can do curl. Curl is another client for the web. Sorry. And I hope you guys are with me. Are we together?
Yeah. Yes, we are.
Yeah, this is not madness. This is tax calculator from group. This is group 1 or 2?
1.
This is group 1. This is their code. I am not lying, and you can see that we got it from the container. That was not, but there is no way to access this website from outside the world because we have not done the port mapping. That's not how you deploy services. So you have to give them the external port. So what do we do? Because we will have guys connecting. Now what I need to do is I'll come history command. So I'll come and look at the history command, and I will come and copy this, what I had used. But I'll come here and you say Docker ps. Then I can do docker stop. What did I just do? I copied there and okay. And then I can do docker. I want to run now, but with port mapping in place. Docker run. And then I do what? Minus D minus P. Then I say I want to map. What's the document saying? It says that group 1, they should map it to 8801. Semantics. And it map it to that. And then I can put the image name. And if I want to give it a name, I can give it. But for now, I just want to do this. And let's look at it. Let's start. Okay, let's look at it. Docker inspect this image. You can use this long image ID or you can use the short one. It doesn't matter. Anyone can do. Now we know that this IP has been given .02 because all the other containers are down. So the Docker engine manages this. So I can do HTTP and I put that. At least now we know this is the website for Otieno, and we can use curl to get it, and it will give us the website. But I can also use another one. Now I can use, alternatively, I can use the local host, which is the host machine, but now use which port? 8801, and it will give me the same page. Now, if you want to give the world access to Otieno's website, then all we need to come here is do 8801. And this is their calculator. True or not true, Otieno?
On behalf of Otieno, it's true.
Yes. Yeah. So this is their calculator, and that brings me to the end of my session today. I hope I have demonstrated service management, process management, and dive deeper into the ports. And what I've just told you is that containers are actually processes on the host machine with some good isolation. They run on a network, and that network is called the bridge network. If you want to be sure, it's called the bridge network. Yes, for if you use the Docker inspect command, which you have seen here, and we can see that it belongs to this bridge network, and this is the IP address. Using that IP address, you can access a service using the port. So every service that runs inside that, you can actually use any port. And if you want to access it, you can use the container IP, that is 306. The only challenge is this, that the bridge network is only accessible within the host computer. So this IP, you cannot use it outside the host. But our services are meant to be accessed outside the host. So that's why we do port mapping, and we do -P, host machine port and container port, and we get it. Containerization and virtualization, I've already talked to you. So I hope that I don't have to repeat that there is no OS for the container. It runs on the kernel. And I know by now you remember what the kernel was. It runs on the kernel of the host machine. And I'm using the word host loosely because you might find it being used, another name being used, but just know the machine where the container is running from, it uses the OS of that. So you cannot have a container running on Windows, running on actually, I'll leave you guys to go find out, but if you're using Docker, there is nothing that runs on, you still have, if you're using the containers, Linux is involved in some way, and I want you guys to go find out. Now, the challenge that I want to give you is simple. When yesterday I told you guys, and this one you have to do it today, because tomorrow I want to have another session with you guys so that we can take you guys further. This week will be crazy. So group 3, they already put their website on the Apache, not within the container. These Apache, the one that we are starting with HTTPD status, that one. Every group must put their website there. Why am I saying that? Because you must know how to deploy without containers. So please, this is not an option. Group 2 and 3, you guys are there. Let me see whether group 2 have anything inside. At least group 3, I had seen it. Yep. So group 2 and 3, you guys have done your part. Group 2, I know you have a challenge, but we'll deal with it. Ensure you create your own group here. And it's not an option, and I'm hoping that tomorrow all the groups will be created there. 2, set up a containerized MySQL DB. And I want to give you a hint. It's so simple that I can come here and I can do Docker run MySQL. And you'll set up your own MySQL DB using Docker container. And I don't want to give you the instructions. Go find out. And the name of the container should be MySQL group 1. So when we come here and we do Docker PS, I should be able to see your group DB there. And the port mapping, I've given you the rule. So MySQL exposes port 3306 in the container, but you need to map 3306 to a port on the host machine. Which rules do we use? So we'll start with 33, and then you can add your group number in 2 digits. So group 1, you don't say 331, you say 3301. And group 11, definitely it becomes 3311. And at the same time, I want you to log into your DB service and create a database, create a table, and insert some data and play with SQL. So that's the task for the day. And I'm hoping that tomorrow we'll meet again at 10 as we dive deeper into the databases. And I expect you guys to have installed just a MySQL. The image for MySQL, I will give you a hint. It's here. You can just go to Docker Hub and you can get that image and it can show you how to install. So you can say Docker run, you give it a name, you say MySQL group 1, you give it a password and you do whatever that you want to do. How to access it, go find out until it works. Don't deploy on Docker Compose. Docker Compose will be something else that you guys will be dealing with later. Do the port mapping accordingly. All we want to do is that by tomorrow, I should be able to log into your DB and see what you have created. You'll give us the password. So you can use a password like ABC1234 and share with I'll require you to share the password so that we can confirm that you have created whatever that you need. So this is today's challenge. Yes. So tell your group members and ensure that they come. Now, as I conclude, and if you have any questions, please post it. But as I conclude, there is one thing that I wanted to highlight in a very high level manner. So this week is about APIs. Marlene mentioned that I'll be the one taking you guys through the APIs. It's a hoax. It was meant to be Akina Peter and Tim, but they have something that is really taking their time. So we have compiled this together with them. But this is the week where the rubber meets the road. You need now to grasp and appreciate the other elements that are remaining for you guys to become good engineers. So by the end of next week, you guys will be ready to solve any problem, as I said. But the key idea is that you have to put in the hours. So understand HTTP. We are hoping that we can appreciate that. I talked about TCP, SSL, socket, WebSocket. Take time to find out about these things. In the week, you're supposed to have an idea. If you don't have a solid grasp, we'll come and show you how a TCP handshake looks like and how you secure your connections using SSL. And those encryptions and the things that make the website have this icon called secure is this SSL. Appreciate what it is in your groups and we'll help you. We'll do some master classes. This week will be tough. You might need to spend a bit of hours learning. So databases, at the end of the module, ensure that you appreciate these things. When you hear NoSQL DB, don't get surprised. What is it? Database models and ER diagrams. I know some of you entity relationship diagrams. A child has a parent and a parent has many children, or a child, whatever. Those things you're supposed to come up with those. They are very important in modeling. ORM, some of you will hear about it. Go find out what it is from a high level, and then you can dig deeper. Migrations, you should know what they are. Connecting to a DB, you should know how to connect to a DB from your application. Just like now, today we know how to connect to an API from an application. We saw that in JavaScript. You need to know how to connect to a DB from your application. And then connection pool, which is something that some of you might not have used, but you need to learn. Indexing, partitioning, you must. And tomorrow I'll specifically come and help you in just appreciating creating a DB and understanding what happens in the DB when you talk about DBMSs. I'll take you guys through indexing and partitioning, because when you're doing production system, you cannot ignore this. Otherwise, your system will be too slow because you have not optimized your DB. I know you guys know how to do inserts. APIs, this document is online. So we want you guys to appreciate API endpoints, HTTP methods. Some of you have an idea. An API, you have an idea by now, but you need to dive deeper. API request and response, you know those HTTP statuses, 304, 200, 404. REST APIs, SOAP APIs, you need to appreciate. And bonus GraphQL APIs, and you need to appreciate Postman, curl, wget, and telnet. I must say that you guys have an easier landing in this one because of what we did in week 1. Backend, appreciate data structures, algorithms. It doesn't mean that you go read the whole book, but at least have an idea of what these things happen. And we will have some master classes for data structures that we are sure you're going to use within your applications that you're going to build. So appreciate the basic language syntax, how you do the loops, and all those things. You just need to ensure that you have that. And whichever language you choose, you must know these things. And in this day and age, you must not know what blocking and unblocking is. Threading is very critical. Logs, you cannot run a system without logs. And the idea of caching will come in handy. And I know some of you will appreciate frameworks. What are they? Why do we get into them? Get into Spring Boot. And anyone who is in your group has a grasp of Spring Boot, I would like to know, so that we work with you guys to ensure that the rest of the team grows in that space, because you're going to use Spring Boot for illustration. I know some of you might be asking, why not use another language? Yes, you can use another language, but I know Spring Boot is very relevant in our local context. It doesn't mean that it fixes everything, but most companies, if you want to work in these big enterprises in Kenya, if you know that, then you'll find yourself at a better place. So you can look at that, deploying your backend, VM, connecting to a DB, deploying on Docker, deploying on Kubernetes, all that, you need to do that. So the deliverable for the week, although you're learning so much, in your groups, by Tuesday next week, you're going to demonstrate APIs that get objects from the DB, create objects into the DB, update data into the DB, delete objects, filter or search. Those are bonuses. And you're going to deploy them on a VM, either on VM using Docker Compose. I know some group yesterday had a look at Docker Compose, and or a Kubernetes cluster. Your service, you must have at least 2 services. You can either deploy the API and the DB service only, but if you're good enough, you can actually add a page to your web app to connect to your APIs to query some data. And that will ensure that if you can do that and you demonstrate that to us on Tuesday, it will mean that you are at a very good space for us to actually get into problem solving. We have exciting challenges, Marlin can confirm. Very exciting challenges. And those challenges are not hypothetical. They are challenges that real organizations require. And we'll have to talk to those real people so that we understand what they do. Part of software engineering is actually understanding who has the problem and what problem do they have and how big of it is a problem. So we just need to ensure that we work together, and we are hoping that you can we can continue working together. So I would ask you guys to shoot any questions that you have on the chat. or you can take a moment and unmute. And as you think of the questions that you need to ask, please ensure that you have access to this document. And Marlene, we can share it on there. Sorry, I sent to Boniface. Don't know why Boniface I'm sending to you. Yeah, so that's the question. Any question that is there. Henry, you're asking, how do we get access to the server? Henry, are you serious? Henry, you do not have access to the server?
Yes, I don't have access.
Hey, you're in which group?
Group 1.
No one in group 1 has access to the server.
Yeah, even me, I don't have access to the server.
Is that
Henry?
You're in group 1. Were you there during the first time when you were doing the commands?
Yeah, but I've tried to do that. It's still not allowing me to get it.
Maranga, who created this folder for you?
It's me.
Okay, let me send you this. The user is root. The password, I'll just send it to you. So anyone who doesn't have access to the server, please communicate. And that's the username is root.
That day you didn't let me in.
Yeah?
I've tried to okay.
Sorry, Henry. You've tried to?
I've tried to get into the server right now, but it's not allowing me to get in. I don't know.
Are you sure you have the right password? Hey, Tanai. I've sent you the credentials. I'm sure they'll not be on the video. Let me just exit. And please ensure that you have access to it now. I'll just verify that SSH root at, just check the IP. It's 157 dot root at 157 dot 230 dot 13 dot 246 slash 8801. I don't need to give the port, sorry. I can do port 22, by the way, just in case you didn't. I can do port 22. Yeah, then I'll put the password. Let me just put that password. Can you confirm you can access now?
Okay, let me confirm.
Yeah, I'm getting inside. Same credentials. Chania. Chanai, sorry. So perfect your knowledge of Docker. Perfect your knowledge of containers within your groups. Try and see how Docker Compose works. Basically, Docker Compose allows you not to do port mapping using the Docker command. You can just have a configuration within your folder, and then you say, just bring up the containers according to the configurations. I know we have not talked about mapping volumes, but when we are dealing with the DBs, you might discover that when you create the tables and the database and everything, once you restart the container, you lose all the data. So I want you to try that out. For those of you who are familiar with what I'm talking about, our guy used the word, zinaitwa mfair, something, this word, yes, lasting for a very short time. Containers are like that. So yeah, so they can disappear, and they disappear with what was inside there. Oh. Yeah. This one, actually, this concept is very, very different, so don't worry. But the key idea about containers is that they whatever is inside the container, once the container is stopped, you lose everything that was inside the container. If you start, it starts a new one. So Chennai, you are in. I hope that you guys are ready to do the challenge for today, and see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. unless someone has a question. Maybe just to do a very quick recap so that you don't forget what we've done, is that we've been able to see how containers, the architecture looks like. We've seen how port mapping looks like. And most importantly, we've been able to illustrate how you manage processes, starting them, stopping them, installing them. And the other element of it is, and some basic commands to run them. I think one of the things that I told you about PS, and I didn't demonstrate that, it's PS reads information from a folder called proc. So if you come here and I just show you something here, if I do PS minus EF grep HTTPD, what did we just kill the process? Who is stopping the process? Oh, this is on my machine. Sorry, I need to log into the server. Sometimes you need to know which machine you're in. Yeah? You could be running the wrong command with shell. So if you do PS minus EF, then you grep HTTPD, shows us the web. If you go and look at this, if you go to the folder proc or processes, and I do ls, then you'll be able to see a lot of IDs there, folders for each and every process. So when you're doing PS, it's basically coming to this folder to check everything. Now, if I do this again, and I know some of you might want to grep services that start with 489.2. Yeah, I'm a 489.2, yes. 489.2, and sorry, not that one. I needed to come here and cd ls. Then I grep for anything that has 489.2. Yeah, so you'll see that there is a folder within the proc folder, if I do this one, and it has all these IDs, and you can see that these were started by user root, and the others were started by Apache. So Apache started, the root user started the first process, and the first process one is actually when you boot, when you start the OS during the boot process. The first process is process number 1, and it's the one that started this, and then this guy started all these other ones. And you can see when you're starting, the root user is the one that is used in the initial startup. And then, of course, the new process now picks Apache user and uses the Apache and HTTPD, Apache web server or HTTPD, one and the same thing. So basically, the HTTPD is the process, but the web server is actually Apache. Yeah. So don't forget that. Don't forget about the ports, containers, and all that. Yes, I was hoping that there is any other question, but I guess you guys are correct, or you are confused. You can confirm which side you take. Are you confused, or do you understand? Yeah, and Marlene, I would like to hand it over to you so that now we come to an end. I hope you guys know what you're supposed to do this week and what you're supposed to do today, and see you tomorrow as we dive deeper into databases. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Kamochu, for that session. I hope we are doing this week. And if anyone has a question, they can ask Kamochu privately or just type it on the Slack channel. I'm sure Kamochu will be glad to help. If there's no other business for the day, I think we'll close it here so that the the guys can go and do what is required. So bye guys, it's been nice having you, and see you tomorrow. Bye. Happy coding.